Ready to light this candle?
Let's go.
Let's go.
All righty, let's get it started. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm pleased to present two absolute rock stars who come from different lanes of the music business. One is an old friend of mine, the other I have admired from afar for years, and they both happen to be very old friends who know one another quite well. I promise you will leave today thinking, wow, who knew? And you'll also leave smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. And in this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and please make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible along the way. And please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thanks to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brew Works, and Project Music. I'm also pleased to introduce a new sponsor to our lineup called Better Than Booze. Better Than Booze is revolutionizing social drinking as you know it. This is a cocktail-inspired line of beverages that use hemp-derived CBD and THC to help people feel highly social without the hangover. Welcome to the new life of the party. Give it a try. Let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome Jason Bentley. Jason is an LA-based radio host, DJ, and music supervisor. He served as music director of NPR flagship KCRW Radio for over a decade, managing the music department, overseeing the station's extensive public programs, and hosting KCRW's acclaimed daily music program called Morning Becomes Eclectic. He's currently host and producer of the long-running global electronic mix show Metropolis for the station. As a music supervisor, Jason has worked on a wide range of feature films, TV shows, ad campaigns, and video games. He was nominated for a Grammy as producer of the Matrix soundtrack, has notably supervised music for films Tron Legacy and Top Gun Maverick, among others. Jason's been featured DJ at major music festivals, including Coachella, EDC, the Hard Festival, San Diego's CRSSD Festival, and Lightning in a Bottle, and has served as on-camera host for Coachella's festival live stream for 6 years. Welcome, Jason. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
And joining Jason as today's featured guest is John Boyle. John is Chief Global Content Officer at ASM Global, the largest venue management company in the world with more than 350 stadiums, arenas, theaters, and convention centers around the world. ASM Global hosts more than 20,000 live events a year across sports, music, and entertainment, welcomes more than 164 million annual guests, and manages more than $50 billion in assets. Prior to ASM, he served 3 years as president of Live Nation Japan and 7 years as CFO and Chief Growth Officer of Insomniac Events. John spearheaded the sales of Insomniac to Live Nation in 2012 and proceeded to launch Electric Daisy Carnival Festival brand to the UK, Mexico, Brazil, India, Japan, and China. John also spent many years running a management company called the BAM Group, representing artists, actors, action sports, and athletes. Clients included multi-platinum Grammy-nominated Alien Ant Farm, say that 3 times fast, and the multi-platinum Grammy-nominated rapper and actor Exhibit, with whom MTV's Pimp My Ride was launched. He also had A&R and marketing stints with Giant Records, Virgin Records, and Warner Brothers Records, in addition to being part of the team to launch the Warped Tour and owning and producing the Snow Core Tour. John holds a dual MBA from Columbia Business School in New York and the Haas Business School at UC Berkeley, as well as a BA in economics from UCLA. It is an honor to welcome these two rock stars to our platform. Take it away, boys.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Hey, John, it's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to welcome the audience. A shout out to Mark Cates, who joined, DJ Carbo from back in the day. So, John, I was saying to Tom that I consider you a friend, but it's kind of sad that it takes a webinar for us to actually spend some quality time together today because we're busy. And you seem especially busy. Just trying to pin you down for this was difficult. Let's, I guess, start with your current role because it seems to have you fairly occupied. When I saw you at Coachella last year, I just bumped into you and I asked you about ASM. I was not familiar. However, this company is hugely influential in the live music and concert touring and event space.
Yeah, I mean, ASM Global, we are the biggest company that, a lot of folks still don't know of. Our scale is massive. Our audience, Tom touched on it. By the way, I think Tom, like you, Jason, you're going to be out of a job after Tom's bit right there. Like he sounds like a DJ and a host and things like that. But our company's so massive, and the number of people that we host at our events around the world, we're bigger than Disneyland. ASM Global, kind of in a nutshell, it's the result of a merger in the fall of 2019 between a company called SMG that managed hundreds of venues around the world, and AEG Presents that managed a smaller number. And they merge and create the largest venue management company in the world. And we all know what happens, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, the world shuts down, right? So, we manage venues, and I oversee programming. Most of our venues program themselves. We have about a quarter of the NBA, a quarter of the NFL in terms of arenas and stadiums.
Explain that a little more. As chief content officer, it's not that you're booking the venues, you're making sure that the content within the venue is accurate. Explain that.
Well, it's making sure that we just have a lot of content flow going through everything. So, look, the pro teams, and it is fun to kind of be aligned with pro sports. I'm a sports guy, and that's been super fun. A new thing for me outside of action sports in my career. But it's making sure that we keep our music family content suppliers happy. So it's working closely with Live Nation on a corporate level, working closely with AEG on a corporate level, working with all the independents across the board. Working with the family entertainment guys, Feld, we do Disney on Ice everywhere. So it's more than just concerts, but concerts, look, at the end of the day, concerts are our bread and butter. They're really important to our business. As a venue, historically, you would be in the food and beverage business. You would sell hot dogs and beer, right? And with our new CEO, Ron Bension, we're elevating the whole fan experience. Our goal is to provide the best fan experience possible. We want shorter lines, better food and beverage offerings, and we want the same experience for the artist, right? So their hospitality has to be exceptional. And everybody needs to make money in the whole chain. So, how we cut deals with Live Nation and AEG is important. Look, my job is on a very high corporate level. It's somewhat corporate-y. Again, our venues tend to kind of book themselves because we have outstanding venues and outstanding local bookers. I guess part of my job is just looking out for everybody and making sure that the deal flow is coming.
Give us a little state of the nation market report from your perspective. Looking forward here, what's your read on the concert industry? I know this is a big question, and you can kind of take it in smaller pieces if you'd like. But what's your sense of the business now?
I mean, look, the business is really healthy. And 2022 was just this crazy anomaly of a year, right? I mean, I don't know, something like 20% of the tours were basically reschedules from, 21, 20, even 19 to a certain degree. And 2023 continues to be just really, really healthy. Not certain it's going to be as healthy as 2022, but it's going to be one of the best years of all time. The business is in a very, very good place. Consumer behavior has changed. I think you could ask anybody in any industry. Consumer behavior has changed post-pandemic. Buying habits are different. Unless you're a superstar act, people tend to buy later. But then when they go, they're going bigger than ever. And I do think people are being a bit more selective. What the phenomena of 23 really is stadiums. Like the stadium, you can't get a stadium avail. You can't get a weekend date in Chicago, Phoenix, Minneapolis. Again, like I said, we have about a quarter of the NFL. You can't find an available date in any of our NFL stadiums because there's so many stadium acts going out. And what I do think we're going to see, Jason, and this is something, it's a bit of soapbox for me, is packaging. There's only so many Beyoncés, there's only so many Taylors, there's only so many of these mega acts, that can sell out a stadium. But I think the Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, Joan Jett tour was very successful, and it just showed the strength of packaging. We also right now we see Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks being out there. The strength of packaging. I do think on the consumer behavior point, people. I mean, this kind of goes back to when we were younger, guys. It's like people want to go and spend a day at an event and tailgate, go in, hear 4 hours of ubiquitous hits with their friends, have the time of their lives. And I don't see that going away. I see a proliferation of that in the future. Fingers crossed. The state of the business is very good.
Well, moving from these general observations to you more specifically and your career trajectory, I do want to cover your time in Japan for Live Nation. But let's talk for a moment about you and your adaptability here. In this position now, what do you think the role has required of you in terms of evolving, growing, changing? Has it demanded different things of you than you experienced before?
It has. I mean, we are a big company, and it's a very localized business. And predominantly our clients, we have sports teams. Very often a stadiums in particular, in some cases arenas, they're owned by the sports team ownership, right? So those are more often than not billionaires, entrepreneurs. But generally speaking, most of our clients are municipalities, cities, counties, states, things like that. Running Insomniac and leading, Jason, you and I were attached to the hip, leading 20 somethings to go put on the biggest raves in the world. This is very different.
Yeah.
Very, very, very different. And so, look, there's been a learning curve for me. There's no question. I've made some mistakes. I'm still learning every day, to be honest. My boss is probably the best single operator in the entire world in terms of knowing how to run a mass gathering venue. So I'm still learning every day, but I have definitely had to adapt. There's been some humility checks in the process.
One thing I've always appreciated about you, and this maybe is a question for people who aspire to your position and your influence in terms of what they have to be and what's required, is that you have always been so easygoing and relatable. And it's I think why I've had so much affection for you from the start is that you are who you are. You have this sort of like youthful optimism in what you do, and you're not trying to be anyone besides yourself 100%. I don't know if this makes sense, but there's always been a little Jeff Spicoli in what you do, and I'm assuming everyone knows who that is, Sean Penn from Fast Times. And you can probably recite your favorite lines from Fast Times. Just give us your top one-liner. But my point is
about Cuba and having some food.
There you go. But I think people often think like, who do I have to be to achieve success? How do I have to change so much? And the sort of prevailing truth about you is that you're just that kid. You're still a kid in a way. You're still that kid excited about music and culture and what you do.
No, I mean, listen, that's really nice of you. And yeah, a quick Spicoli story. When I was young, when I was in high school, I had to kind of pay for my ski. I grew up in Lake Tahoe. I had to pay for my ski pass and my skis. And I worked in a video rental store where we had VHS machines. And I actually edited every Spicoli scene out of Fast Times. And I made copies and I sold it to all my friends. So you didn't have to watch the rest of the movie. You could just watch the Spicoli scene. So yes, there's a lot of Spicoli in me. I think to your point, look, authenticity is important. Not trying to be somebody you're not. I mean, Jason, I was never a dance music guy. I made it pretty clear I wasn't a dance music guy running Insomniac. Did I value what Pasquale had built? Did I value the community? Did I value all the righteousness of it? 100%. I did. I'm a rock dude, clearly. So I don't know. I mean, even from my gangster rap days, which I do like gangster rap, but managing Exhibit and his crew, managing the Far Side and their crew, I never pretended like I was a black dude from South Central. Like clearly I'm not, right? So just being authentic, caring, I think is really important. Caring, and maybe a really important word in all of this is just commitment. Like being committed to this, being committed to the artist, being committed to the fan, being appreciative, feeling blessed. Like I get to do this. That's what I tell all the kids that I've hired over the past 20, 30 something years. Is like, if you think this is a job and you think you're entitled, get the fuck out. Like this is a life. Like, are you in or are you not in? Right? And you got to be nice to people, man. Like, the screaming and yelling, maybe once in a blue moon, there's a time and place for that, but there really isn't a time and place for that. So I appreciate that, Jason. It means a lot. You know me well. My mom would be really happy if she was like, oh, shit, I forgot to invite my mom. She would have been really happy hearing you say that. So, yeah.
Well, let's segue to Japan, because after all that you've said about just being yourself, I can imagine the requirements of finding success in a very different culture with a whole different etiquette and system of business and operations must have been a huge challenge.
Yeah, so I had gone to Japan a few times with the artists I had managed in the past, and was kind of fascinated by the culture to a certain degree. And then we launched EDC during my time at Insomniac. We launched EDC Japan, and I had to spend a lot of time there. This is before I became president of Live Nation Japan, and I learned a lot in that. And to your point about etiquette, and yes is never yes, no is never no. Bowing at elevators, bowing at doors, meetings to set up meetings. It was hard. What I was told going into it was to not change, to be myself. And with that came, like a lot of people ask, do I speak Japanese? The answer is I don't. I understand Japanese. I don't speak it. So when they were talking, when Japanese businessmen and women would be talking amongst themselves, I could pretty much understand what they were saying. I pretended like I didn't. And then I would just be myself. And, listen, I think, again, it comes down to authenticity. I think so much of this comes down to integrity and honesty. You're only as good as your word. And so, I've always been very honest, and, bad news is bad news and you got to deliver it. And, with Japan, it was, you had to, I built some credibility to the extent that I could say to somebody in a boardroom, well, are we going to do this deal or are we not going to do this deal? And that was totally like off limits to say something like that. But I had built the credibility. At the same time, I always made sure to bow at the elevator. Like the rituals, you have to respect and you have to adhere to. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a little kind of, a little bit of a pushy American, as long as you're respectful. And that's what made it work. We accomplished so much in Japan. We got venue rights. We got, we had gotten the programming rights for the, we were partnering with a company called Dentsu, like the biggest advertising company in the world. Like we were going to program the opening ceremony of the Olympics with Dentsu. Like we accomplished so much. And then, COVID just kind of came in and like cut the legs right out of it. So it was, it was, again, a massive learning experience. A great part of it, though, was being part of the Live Nation Asian network and then spending time in Korea and spending a lot of time in Hong Kong and Singapore and Vietnam. All these, culturally, all these places are very, very different. I know you're an Asian fan. I think you spent some time in Asia. And they're all just very, very different.
My wife is Japanese, and we're actually going with the family in November for the first time.
Oh, wow.
To meet her family and bring our kids. So I'll need to get some tips from you.
Listen, I can tell you where to go eat. That's about the best tips I have. How old are your kids now?
The twins are 2 and the baby is 7 months.
Wow. It's you and I with our friendship. My daughter's now 20 and my son's 17. So like I'm almost an empty nester.
Yeah, I'm a late bloomer. I was telling Tom that I didn't even think it was going to happen for me, and then I met the right person.
I know you did. You've told me that. I'm happy for you.
So what would you say, looking back at your time in Japan, as the thing you were most proud of, your accomplishment professionally?
Well, look, we grew our market share. So Japan is a relatively mature market. And there were 3 legendary promoters there. Udo, who did everybody, like Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, and everybody. Mr. Udo has since passed. There was Creative Man. And then there were the guys that do Fuji Rocks. So it was a very mature market. And, the Japanese don't like doing business with people that aren't Japanese, quite frankly, right? So, getting the rights to, and the Olympics were coming, right? So venues were being built all over Tokyo. Getting the exclusive booking rights to some venues. Look, the Olympic thing was like, landing the Olympics and partnering with Dentsu, that was going to be epic. Like epic beyond belief, and having the phone calls with my Live Nation team at the time, about, Madonna and Coldplay and acts like of that caliber, Beyonce, nothing actually got done because COVID came and we, I don't know. I'm just proud we grew our market share by like 300%, honestly. And that people took Live Nation serious. Live Nation had been in existence for like 5 years, and not a lot had gotten done. And during my tenure, a lot got done. So it's kind of more of a holistic what we accomplished thing than a single thing, Jason.
Sure. Well, as we step back through time in your career, let's talk about Insomniac for a minute. And this is really when I met you, although our professional careers crossed earlier than that with Organic 96, which it was really the first of its kind, certainly on the West Coast. And this was essentially a festival or a rave that was held at a local off-season ski resort. I think it was Snow Summit.
Snow
And
Valley.
Snow Valley. And you were part of that, although I don't think we met at that time. We were both very involved in the success of that, along with our mutual friend, Phil Blaine, who was part of that, and Jerry Gerard as well.
Yep.
This
And
was really.
Paul. And Paul.
Oh, and Paul T. Yeah, Paul T. At the time, this was huge for the States because we just hadn't seen anything like it. Obviously, in the UK and Europe, they had festivals already. But this was the top tier talent in the genre. Major radio station that I was at the time, K-Rock, was part of it and broadcasting live. So everything really aligned in terms of making this underground scene legitimate in mainstream terms, in terms of the actual concert business. This was the first time something like this had been staged. So that was Organic 96. But fast forward to Insomniac, you ended up being their CFO and like development officer, something like. But tell us about your time at Insomniac when we really met. Well,
it's funny because look, the music, and by the way, I think you and I probably did meet. I just don't recall. I'm memory challenged at this age. I'm sure you and I met at the American Legion Hall at one of Phil Blaine's shows prior to the whole organic bit, right? And for the audience, Jason was a big time DJ on K-Rock. And K-Rock at the time, arguably still is, the most important alternative radio channel on the entire planet. What was your show? I
did a Saturday night electronic show called After Hours for 14 years for K-Rock.
14 years. So Jason, for the audience, Jason is he's really the guy that brought dance music. I mean, listen, there's three people. Well, there's more than three people, but Jason and Pasquale certainly are two of the ones that literally built the dance music business in the States. Phil Blaine certainly had his hand in it. And then there's a lot of others Disco Donnie, there's a lot of others who have their hands in it. It was never my scene. I was always a rock dude. But we all kind of loosely knew each other from around town. And I had just known, like LA, if you're in the music, like LA's this big at the end of the day, right? If you're in the music business, right, Jason? I mean, it's like, you just know people because, and again, going back to that word commitment, right? If you're committed, you're going to run into people and you're going to see them over and over again because you live this. It's not a job, it's a life. And Pasquale and I just loosely knew each other. And Pasquale was involved in Organic in 96, as you were talking about. And I had bought and sold a few businesses. I had gone back to business school, and dance music was becoming the biggest thing in the world, certainly in America. Pasquale had a property, Electric Daisy Carnival. He was doing it at the LA Coliseum. There were some mishaps there. He had to move it to Vegas. And Pasquale just kind of called me out of the blue one day, and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "people want to they want to buy my business," and he's like, "I'm not really I just want to put on shows," and Pasquale calls them parties. He's like, "I just want to put on parties," and he's like, "Can you help me?" And at the time, I was kind of in between stuff, and I was like, "Let me come in and look at your books," and yeah, I'll help you. We're friends, and look, Pasquale is undisputedly the king of dance music on the planet. Would you agree with me, Jason? Like, he's the guy, right?
Yeah. And in terms of authenticity, I mean, the first time I met Pasquale, he was passing out flyers for parties, for underground events. And so when you see somebody come from such a grassroots background, it's easy to cheer for them.
Yeah. So Pasquale had he was successcul. He had a lot of brands. I don't know. He had, this is 2011, by the way, at this point. Maybe beginning of 2011, and kind of at the end of 2011, kind of segues into the beginning of 2012, which, by the way, that's when you and I launched EDM Biz, was in 2012, which I don't know if you're going to ask about that, but we'll go there later.
Oh, yeah.
But Pasquale was successful enough that he had bought a 12-unit apartment building in Koreatown in Los Angeles, converted it into office space, took the, and these were like, the apartments were above, down below was the parking garage, used the parking garage to house all of his production that he owned and his merchandise and whatnot. And I walk in, and this is a rough part of town, not like a great part of Los Angeles. I mean, K-Town's very special in its own way, but this was not. And I walk in and I'm like, all right, so, let me see your numbers. and he has his office manager, Anna Smith, you probably remember Anna, brings me a box with like a file of receipts, and then like a checkbook that has a little ledger tabs on the left side and the checks that are torn out. And they're like, here are the books. And I'm like, there's no software, no Quicken, no nothing. And so I start going through everything. And while I'm there, like Corin Capshaw shows up, and Irving shows up, and Russian hedge fund dude shows up, and this guy shows up. And I'm like, what the fuck's, I shouldn't swear, what the F is going on here, And Pasquale and I spend more and more time together, and everybody wanted to buy his company. And, he needed somebody to come in, kind of package it. In finance, you call it a book, put a book together. And then in his case, because everybody wanted to buy it, it was an auction. So people start throwing in offers, and then you weed them out. The offers go up and up and up. And, I am so forever grateful to Pasquale for that experience. If I hadn't gotten the business degrees, I don't think I would have been given the credibility among the buyers, to be honest, because I could read a balance sheet, I could speak the language. Ultimately, we sold it to Live Nation, and then Pasquale just kind of cut me loose and said, go open up EDCs around the entire world, which we opened up EDCs. Jason, you were on a lot of this with me. We opened them up in Mexico, which is now the largest single festival in Mexico. Sao Paulo, Seoul, Japan, Tokyo, London, Puerto Rico. I'm missing like 5. But I basically lived on airplanes. And and we had sold to Live Nation, so we were part of the Live Nation machine at that point. By the way, to be clear, Pasquale only sold 50.1% to Live Nation, because he didn't want, he wanted to maintain as much equity as he possibly could, and he didn't want to ever appear to be like selling out to the man. He never did. He always, even after the sale, he did things his way. He's a genius, an absolute genius, and that ride was the best ever, even though I wasn't a dance music fan. But I did become really close with a lot of the DJs, and I did learn to appreciate the art. You helped me with that a lot, Jason.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to be around you at that time, and the one thing you came to appreciate the drop. That's something that I love. Sort of the most salient point of the music is this sort of signature drop that happens. And yeah. So
and then the bounce. Right. No, you taught me a lot, Jason.
I am curious on what on earth prepared you. Maybe it's just your DNA to help kind of shape something that was in such disarray and so much chaos, sort of by nature, a chaotic property, to kind of shape that for the next level. Had anything in your career been comparable to that experience?
I mean, not on that level, no. I mean, look, being, the time I spent in gangster rap, filming videos where I had to wear a bulletproof vest and was surrounded by guns and shit like that. Like that's chaos on a whole different level. Like, it's like the polar opposite, right, Jason? One is like violence, the other is love, right?
Yeah.
And what we did have to do, I mean, listen, I don't know. It wasn't that tough, to be honest. Pasquale listened. Pasquale was a great listener. He made good decisions. Simon Lamb was part of his team at the time, and Simon was very thoughtful. And we just kind of worked through it. I think what, what's really important for everybody to know, besides the genius that is Pasquale, is, paramount to Pasquale's health and safety, right? So given the nature of these events and what's going on, I'm not going to elaborate. I think everybody can understand, health and safety was everything. And, making sure that we were the best in the world at health and safety was on top of what we did, I think
What was the most sort of mind-boggling or eye-opening kind of thing that happened at that time in terms of general interest, investors, speculators? What like I remember the Disney chairman. We gave him a tour of EDC in a golf cart.
Michael Eisner.
Michael Eisner. Yeah. That's just like one example that came to mind of just like, I can't believe this is happening.
Well, we flew in on the helicopter, right? We took the helicopter from Vegas to the Speedway. No, I mean, listen, the tours in Vegas, the interest in EDC and Insomniac. I mean, it was, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I mean, the years we did the conference, right, Jason, 2012 through 2017, like that conference was cracking, right? And the people that were there, it's like, half of them weren't like, they didn't even know what, like they just had checks. They were coming with their checkbook to try to get in, right? So, the helicopter rides, Michael Lang from Woodstock, him coming and showing him, riding in on a helicopter and showing him like, what his vision has evolved into was special. And look, lots of challenges, there's nothing fun about when, a kid goes down, and you gotta rescue the kid. We got really, really good at that. That was the hardest part. The best part was just, being the most sexy festival property in the world. That was the best part, right? And even in going to Mexico, going to Sao Paulo. I mean, literally, I got off a plane in Sao Paulo when we went to start the thing, and frickin' the mayor picks me up off the tarmac and puts me in his helicopter and rides me around Sao Paulo. Like stuff like that. Like that doesn't happen, right? But it did happen. Working for Insomniac. Again, Pasquale, love you so much, brother. So grateful to him. And he's the one that really made us friends too. Our collision would not be, we wouldn't have what we have together without Pasquale.
So we should maybe take a moment and go to Tom and see if there are any questions from the audience that we should pick up on. We're sort of at the midpoint.
In the Q&A part, one from my friend Kevin Klager. He wants to hear John's thoughts on the recent Taylor Swift Ticketmaster kerfuffle. Kerfuffle. Hey, that's 3 times fast. John, any thoughts on what's going on with Ticketmaster?
It's a hard question for me to answer. I mean, what I will say is, Taylor, the Taylor tour just started at our venue. She rehearsed at our venue in Phoenix, launched the tour in Phoenix 3 nights ago, did 2 sold out nights. I mean, the highest grossing 2 nights we've ever seen in the stadium ever. Ticketmaster is a very, it's a very solid software platform. Really, really strong. I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about it. I do think the congressional hearings, I don't know. There's a lot of that was just posturing by politicians, to be honest. I mean, look, you got 2 really, really strong ticketing platforms out there in the market in the States. It's different around the world. But, both Ticketmaster and Access are really, really strong platforms. There's a lot, my biggest beef is all the bullshit that the press perpetuates when they don't know what the F they're talking about. That's my problem. It's like, if somebody's going to put something out there, at least do your homework and be thoughtful about it. If you want to talk about, there's these tickets for sale at that price or whatever. Well, one, did you actually buy one? Did you go to the show? Did the ticket work? If you're just like propagating what is kind of the the gossip du jour, I don't know. I'm not down with you. Like, show me, you know, where's the beef? So I'm not going to comment anymore on it. Ticketmaster is a really solid company, really solid. And the fees, that's a whole different conversation, but I'm not going there.
Tom, was there another question that you saw? Okay. John, I want to talk about mentors or people who have influenced you. You mentioned, you know, Pasquale and Paul T. But I really noticed working with you on the conference that we created with Insomniac, EDM Biz. You know, we'd have to feature moderators and panelists and keep that fresh and reinventing. And you drew a lot of star talent in terms of executives to participate. But who is your, you know, you really attend on the movements and the power players and the deals, and you know, it's almost like sports. You know, if you have a sports star that you look up to, who's your, you know, Kobe Bryant? Who's the guy that you look to that has been an inspiration through and through?
I mean, it's a great question. You know, again, I'm learning a lot from my current boss, that's for sure. He's definitely a mentor. And yes, Paul T has played. Really, what's interesting is the Golden Voice crew, Paul T and Rick Van Sapp. Paul's partner in Golden Voice. I mean, listen, Golden Voice brought me in 1991. I was doing production. The early 90s was a glorious time for music. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Pumpkins, the list goes, Temple of the Dog, the list goes on and on and on, right? So Paul T and I was at the time I was closer with Rick. Rick passed, unfortunately. And I'm still very close. In fact, I'm getting off this call. I'm driving to the desert to go have dinner with Paul tonight, by the way. He's absolutely a mentor. You know, look, I learned a lot from Rapino. Rapino is, and remember, he was our first keynote, right?
Yeah.
Year one, he was our first keynote at EDM Biz. He said yes, for God's sakes. Learned a lot from Michael. But I mean, listen, going back to when I was young, there is one name that, it's Kevin Lyman. And Kevin Lyman at the time ran production for Golden Voice. Kevin Lyman started the Warped Tour. Kevin Lyman's currently a professor at the USC Thornton School of Music Business. He's the one that really helped me understand, like, you know, we're a community. You got to take care of people. You got to be nice to people, you know. So Kevin and Paul, there's another guy named Phil Jones that goes back to kind of my action sports roots, and US Open of surfing and X Games and stuff like that. But Kevin's the guy. Paul's right up there too. As I get, you know, older, Michael's important, Ron Bension's important. You know, they're all important. But Kevin's the one.
Were they just leading by example to you, or did they take time to really kind of help and nurture your own career?
I think every name that I mentioned, they all took the time. It wasn't just leading by example. It was spending time with me, like a lot of time. And there's been times in my career where I've been needy. You know, I need attention, I need guidance, I need communication. And every name I mentioned, they were there. I mean, Rapino, he, like, you know, if you're one of his guys, like, his communication is second to none. Like, we'll just respond in a second to anything. And, you know, Kevin and I became close, like, pretty much before the internet started, for the most part, literally. So for Kevin and I, it was, by the way, another name that I have to drop, oh my God, is Geiger, Mark Geiger. Geiger sold me my first show at UCLA, a little band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Geiger's one of my best friends in the entire planet. I look at most of these people, they're not mentors anymore, they're just friends. Yeah, what I am lucky of, where I'm lucky, Jason, is I look at this crew. If you put Rapino's in a kind of a different a different bucket. But if you look at Paul, you look at Geiger, you look at Mueller, you look at a lot of these guys, they're all 5 to 8 years older than me. So what I like to say is we have pledge classes in our business, in the music business, right? These guys are like my older brothers. And they brought me in and they gave me credibility. I would be nowhere without Geiger, nowhere without him. He bought Snowcore when he had Artist Direct, my tour, right? So I don't know. I think maybe that's part of what you were talking about earlier. Like I feel an obligation to get back, pay it forward. Like it's really important stuff. These guys, they were there for me. They're still there for me. And even though I don't work for Rapino, if I hit him right this second, I guarantee you he hits me back in that fast.
And the other side of this, in your view of the field, do you see people coming up? Do you then kind of share these principles and things that people have imparted on you?
Yes. I mean, I kind of say that because the world has changed, social media has impacted everything, right? We were, we used to have to pick up the phone and call people, right? A lot of people don't do that anymore. I hope there is. Listen, I'm optimistic. I got a 20-year-old daughter who's a sophomore at the USC Thornton School of Music Business. Rebecca, shout out to you. Her friends call her Bex Boyle. I'm working for her one day, Bex Boyle. And, she's pretty fiercely committed. She's promoting her first show next week, like her first, full on taking a risk,
Wow.
No, I mean, I'm not a big fan of social media. I think it's fucked up a lot of humanity. But it is what it is. Like I reckon like it's, at our company at ASM Global, like it's, it's our driving marketing mechanism. And so I don't know. I do think there's an element of innocence, Jason, that's been lost. When we were doing this, and you're old enough to know, not to out you. But I mean, it was all pretty innocent. We were committed, right? Like we were living this.
Yeah.
We weren't checking our freaking swipes or whatever, our likes and whatever, right? We were doing this because it was important. And we knew we were doing something. And, one thing I tell the young people as they come into this business is, what's our product? I ask this question a lot. What's our product? And people will say, concerts, or people will say, the one answer that isn't the answer I'm going to give is experience. We're in the experience business. I agree with that. I think you knew Tony Shays, right? From Zappos,
Yeah.
right?
Thanks to you.
Well, we were on the boat, right? Anyway, whatever. So Tony Shays from Zappos, his whole thing was and he was an online shoe company. What's his product? Happiness. I mean, what's our product? We deliver happiness. We change lives. And so, some of the innocence of that is gone. But I hope, I do think there's a wave of young people that believe in cause, that are altruistic. I do think there's a young wave coming up where they want to make sure that our business makes the world a better place. So I'm optimistic. Listen, I don't have a choice but to be optimistic because my daughter's one of them. But I'm optimistic. So there you go. Yeah.
Hear, hear. Well, in the final few minutes we have, let's talk about what's next for you. What makes you happy going forward, and where you're going to put your energy.
I mean, listen, I love my job. I love my company. I think we have a lot of growth opportunity. Look, I get a lot of happiness out of my kids. My daughter's going to be a rock star in this business. She had an internship this summer for Brent Smith, who's a big time agent at Wasserman, represents Kendrick and Drake and SZA, and she'll be working the SZA show tonight. She still works for him part-time. She has a job already. My son, who's a senior in high school, he doesn't want to be in the music business, which I'm kind of glad. He wants to go out and be a lawyer and sue bad guys. He's a little too progressive for a guy who's pretty progressive, but again, this is where I get some optimism about youth. I see what my kids are aspiring to, and it's like, okay, so look, I hope to have a long run with this company. I don't know how many chapters I have left, Jason. But I'm as energized as I have ever been. I'm learning. It's important to keep learning. Like the day you stop learning, I don't know. That's probably not a good day.
Mm. Well, really, the last thing I have is one time you told me.
Oh no.
No, one time you told me that you were, when you were young, you were a competitive, like downhill skier or something like that. And I was just always curious whether that gave you a special skill set going forward. Uh, I guess dealing with intense situations or stressful situations. Is that true?
Well, I mean, I was a junior Olympic skier in high school. And the only reason I ended up going to UCLA, well, one, I didn't make the Olympic team. Two, it was the best school I'd gotten into. I'd never been to LA. This was the best school I got into. And I don't know, I think it makes me competitive. It was
How old were you at that? How old were you at that time?
well, I mean, I can ski better than I can walk, but I'm not a very good walker, so the bar is pretty low. But I mean, I could still totally rip. I could only rip for about 20 minutes, and my body starts falling apart at this point in my life. No, I don't know. It taught me. You know what? It taught me commitment. I mean, growing up in Lake Tahoe, this is kind of interesting. Growing up in Lake Tahoe, it's kind of like if you're like 6'7", which I'm not. And you grow up in Manhattan Beach and you can spike a ball, like by the time you're like 12, you're like identified as a volleyball player, right? Or if you grow up in South Central and you're just dunking right and left, like you get kind of put into these lanes. I got put into the ski lane when I was 8. And being in the ski lane in Lake Tahoe, you would get out of school during the winter at noon. You take the bus to Squaw Valley. It's now called the Palisades. I think we're a little overly woke, in my opinion, when you have to rename the home of the Olympics, Squaw Valley, to Palisades. But that's a whole nother podcast. And we would just run gates all day long, race all day long, and then that's what you do for your entire childhood. It taught me commitment, taught me competition. I knew I wasn't going to make, I was not that good. I mean, I was good, but I knew I wasn't going to make the Olympics. So it taught me humility. I wasn't going to achieve my dream of being in the Olympics, but, I don't know. I'll tell you one thing, growing up in Tahoe, pre-internet, pre-Tahoe becoming Aspen West, when it was a blue collar town, was a pretty special place to grow up. And I'm really grateful for that. So,
So
still love me skiing, but then my knees hurt for weeks after I could go skiing. Tom will tell you. My knees hurt for weeks after I go skiing. So I had to get cortisone shots recently because my knees were so sore. Anyway, yeah.
Well, listen, I love you, brother, and I wish you all the best in your continued success and career. And we didn't even talk about half of the things that you've been involved in. I was looking at your resume, and it goes back to Virgin Records, Warner Brothers, Sanctuary Music Group, Snowcore Tour. We didn't even cover that stuff, but kudos.
But Jason, really quick, before we have a couple minutes, I mean, look, I should be more interviewing you than you should be interviewing me.
No, this is your show today.
You're the legend, but where'd you grow up?
Santa Monica.
Right. So you're like a born and bred LA dude, right?
Yeah.
I think I know this, but again, memory challenge. Where'd you go to college? Did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to Loyola Marymount and got involved in their radio station there, KXLU, which is a great punk rock station. And that led me to KCRW, where I still do a show to this day. K-Rock along the way. So yeah, radio was always a passion of mine.
What out of all the music supervision you've done, what's the one you're most proud of? What's the film you're most proud of? The
Matrix was a really special time. I was working at Maverick Records, and just sort of like dumb luck, I as the A&R guy, I went over to meet the Wachowskis and take a look at their their film, and so it was right place, right time. But then it continued, and it turned into a 4 year adventure. So that was fantastic. Also, Tron Legacy and my relationship with that director, Joe Kosinski, has been really special. I helped him with his film Oblivion and also Top Gun Maverick, and he's a friend, and he's a brilliant person. Just being around smart people.
Pretty amazing how well received I mean, it's such a great movie, Top Gun, right? So,
Yeah.
what's next what's next for you? You asked me this question. What's next for you? I mean, you have fatherhood for a long time.
Yeah, for me, my big gig is being a dad right now, but I've been just consulting, music supervision, working on advertising. I'm hoping to land a feature film right now. Doing some work with the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, up on Fairfax and Wilshire on culture programming. So just trying to put it together, but being dad number one is pretty important right now.
Again, I hope, Tom, I hope you invite Jason back to be the subject, and I would love nothing more than to be the interviewer if we can switch roles here. Jason, you and I were attached to the hip for 5 or 6 years, right? Doing that EDM Biz conference, and getting to know you has been nothing but a pleasure, and my respect for you is crazy, and I love you a lot, brother. So thank you.
Thanks,
you
Jim.
for doing this.
And thanks, Tom, for bringing us together, and the crew, the audience today.
I'll see you backstage at the Coachellas in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Tom, what else?
Well, that was one question that I posed in the chat early on, and that is what we really want to know is how can you get us tickets?
No.
Listen, guys, I really appreciate you doing this. Jason, as I mentioned in my intro, I've admired you from afar for many years. I'm a loyal NPR listener, have been for most of my life, it seems. Boyle, you're one of my favorite people in the whole industry. So the audience, you got yourselves a real treat today. And if Jason's down with it, I would love to have him back in the hot seat at some point in the future and let John, fire some questions at him. But with that, I'm going to do my customary sign off, and that is to everyone out there, be nice to each other and talk to you soon. Come back next week.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.